The eldest son of late Cuban revolutionary leader Fidel Castro has committed suicide, according to state-run media. Fidel Castro Diaz-Balart was 68. His death was announced on television. A doctor of science, Fidel Angel Castro Diaz-Balart, who was being cared for by a group of doctors for a number of months due to a case of severe depression, took his own life, she said. Castro Diaz-Balart was also known as Fidelito, or Little Fidel, because of how much he looked like his father. A nuclear physicist who studied in the former Soviet Union, he's been working as a scientific counselor to the Cuban Council of State and vice president of the Cuban Academy of Sciences at the time of his death.
The German lower house parliament has extended a ban limiting migrants from bringing close relatives into the country for 6 months. After that, new rules on family reunions will come into effect, allowing up to 1,000 migrants to enter Germany every month. The deal between the CDU and SPD has raised hopes Chancellor Angela Merkel will finally be able to forge a coalition government following months of political limbo. Admitting the bill was a compromise, Interior Minister Thomas de Maizière said its approval stood for humanity and accountability and integration and limitations. While the SPD's Eva Högel insisted the only reason her party had agreed to the extension was that new regulations allowing migrants to reunite with direct members of their family would come into effect in August. The new law passed by 376 votes to 248. In March 2016, Germany imposed a 2-year suspension on family reunifications for migrants with so-called subsidiary status, after nearly 900,000 asylum seekers arrived in the country the year before.
In China, at least 3 people have been seriously hurt and 18 others injured after a van ploughed into pedestrians in downtown Shanghai. Authorities initially feared an attack in the heart of China's financial hub, as Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May was speaking at a business event in the city. But police say the driver, who was carrying gas canisters, was smoking, and that probably caused his vehicle to burst into flames and crash. The driver's been charged with carrying dangerous materials.
A man who drove a van into worshippers outside a mosque in North London, killing one of them, will be sentenced today. Darren Osborne from Cardiff was convicted yesterday of murder and attempted murder in what police and prosecutors say was an act of terrorism. He developed a hatred of Muslims after watching a TV drama about child sex abuse involving British Pakistani men. The imam of the mosque in Finsbury Park has welcomed the guilty verdicts.
I definitely feel that justice has been done. He stood trial, he answered for his crime, and he'll be punished accordingly for his crime and receive an appropriate sentence. And that's the best that could have been hoped for.
Local people marched in solidarity with the Muslim community following the attack in June last year. It killed a 51-year-old man who'd collapsed on the roadside just before the van ploughed into the crowd. 12 other people were injured.
But the courtyard is pretty flooded.
President Trump is today expected to approve the public release of a Republican congressional memo alleging FBI bias against him. The move set to further inflame tensions between his administration and the top domestic law enforcement agency, but senior Republicans defend its declassification.
What this is not is an indictment on our institutions, of our justice system. This memo is not an indictment of the FBI, of the Department of Justice. It does not impugn the Mueller investigation or the Deputy Attorney General.
Tensions over the disputed document have gripped Washington. Democrats paint the memo as misleading and intended to discredit the criminal probe into potential collusion between Trump's presidential campaign and Russia.
They're putting out a bogus memo that is not true, but alluding to certain facts that are damaging. And that's why the Justice Department and the FBI have said that this is dangerous and reckless and should not be done.
Trump and Russia have denied any collusion, the president calling the investigation a witch hunt and hoax. The probe by special counsel Robert Mueller and the FBI inquiry that preceded it have cast a long shadow over Trump's year-old presidency.
At least 5 people have reportedly been killed after a collision between 2 army helicopters in southeast France. The crash occurred around 9 a.m. this morning near Cabas, around 50 kilometers north of the popular tourist resort of Saint-Tropez. It's unclear what caused the accident. Both aircraft were from the Army's School of Light Aviation.
Theresa May and Xi Jinping taking part in a traditional tea ceremony in Beijing. The two world leaders have announced a joint trade review. Formal free trade talks can't begin until the UK officially leaves the EU next year. May's trip is part of Britain's bid to reinvent itself as a global trading nation after the 2016 Brexit referendum.
We'd like to see much more of these. We'd also like to see more going out to the rest of the world and finding business and bringing it back to the UK so that it's easier for probably small and medium-sized companies to find these contracts and these opportunities. But basically, we're going to have to ramp up a lot the amount of trade promotion that we do because it's going to be very, very vital after Brexit.
At a news conference on Wednesday, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said Beijing's relations with the UK won't be affected. We are facing the current state of the UK's exit from the European Union. But just as history has been, our relationship will not change because of changes in Britain-Europe ties. May says that British companies will sign more than €10 billion in deals during this trip. It's a positive step, but the key to a successful Brexit still lies closer to home.
Sorting out our relationship with the EU is the most important thing right now, because the terms of our relationship with the EU will also dictate what we can and can't do with the rest of the world. So promote trade now, do these trade trips, absolutely, but we've got to remember that that's the order. EU first, then the rest of the world.
On Friday, May will visit China's financial hub, Shanghai, before heading back to London.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has praised the court's decision to overturn a doping ban on 28 Russian athletes. The ruling by the Court of Arbitration in Sport reinstates the results from the 2014 Sochi Games. But Putin said the fight against doping must go on alongside the World Anti-Doping Agency. This decision proves our position, which is that a vast majority of our athletes are clean and did not commit doping, he said. But we also need to respect the side that we were arguing with. The International Olympic Committee insists the cleared athletes are not automatically free to compete next week at the Pyeongchang Olympics in South Korea. It says the ruling is evidence of systemic manipulation of the anti-doping system. A description that's infuriated the Russian Federation Council Speaker Valentina Matvienko. It's obvious now that it's impossible to hide. Are they doubting the decision by the Court of Arbitration for Sports, which was created exactly for this purpose? However, Russia's sports minister Pavel Kolobkov says the IOC will be asked to allow the 28 athletes to compete as neutrals in Pyeongchang.
Y televidente, moviendo por otro espacio comercial, ahora nuestro back nos informe deportivo.